Welcome to the Podcast Discovery Show, the podcast that's about other podcasts, where every single week we have a book club style discussion about a podcast that we recommended last week. And at the end of this episode, we're going to have a brand new recommendation, and we'll talk about that one next week. I'm Kirk.
And I am Zach. And this week, we're talking about a show called The Constant, a history of getting things wrong. And the actual episode I recommended last week was Diabolical Devices of the Demon of Darkness.
Diabolical Devices of the Demon of Darkness.
It's really great to say. It is a show hosted by Mark Chrysler, and this show does deep dives on kind of obscure or maybe understood places in history. And so I told you to listen to this episode without telling you what it was about. And so
Yes.
What did you think?
Okay, first of all, I loved the show. And even at the beginning, I was like, ooh, I like the way this sounds. This is good. And then when he got to like what it was actually about, I was like, I see. It's about the bicycle. But no, I actually listened to the episode twice because I liked it so much. And there was so many like little nuggets of, I think, discussion starter stuff that I wanted to put some, write some stuff down. And the first thing that I thought about is this guy. First of all, he's good at sound design. I see that from a mile away.
Yeah, sounds
every
great.
time we listen to shows now. But
yeah, I feel like we've learned that by trying to have good sound design, so we can hear it now better
from failure over and over. But the thing that I was most impressed by, because sound design you can learn, I feel like, but one of the things that I was really impressed by was his writing. Like you could tell that, he did a lot of, and also his research, those two things, they go hand in hand. But the way that you take that research and then you weave it into a narrative for an episode, I don't even know how much work goes into that. It's got to be like hours of researching and then somehow finding a way to weave that research into a presentable narrative. And that is very, very impressive to me.
I always found that impressive as well, especially on this type of show, because it's essentially extra. It ends up being part of it, but like he didn't have to go the extra lengths of essentially starting the episode with kind of Frankenstein and Mary Shelley and really setting the stage for a story that would continue throughout the entire thing.
And like even that, like there's a little nugget there where he found a way to, that whole story of how Mary Shelley and, a bunch of other writers were stuck in basically a snowstorm, and they did a wager on who could write the scariest story. And she ended up writing Frankenstein. And she, of course, blew everyone out of the water. But the fact that it tied in somehow to the origin of the bicycle, because the cold snap literally was almost worldwide because of this volcano eruption. And then because of the volcano eruption, all the oats died. So that made horses die across the world. And also I love his tongue in cheek, like, just don't think about the horses dying.
Yeah.
Oh, God, we already thought about it. I'm so sorry.
Mass horse death.
It's just so sad. But like how he tied that in together to, there's a shortage of horses and they were the main means of transportation. And so this dude invents the bicycle or the velocipede. There was
so many of these.
A name at the beginning that was much worse than that. The velocipede sounds pretty cool sounding. It kind of sounds like a horror movie in itself.
It does kind of
like a velociraptor mixed with a centipede. It sounds terrifying.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a terrible horror movie I would watch.
But the velocipede okay. I've seen pictures of it. It looked like just a 2x4 with wheels, and that's it. And you can like move the front wheel. But what it reminds me of is that toddler bike that kids get, like their first bike where it doesn't have pedals. It's just like they can sit on it and they can just like move their feet and it rolls. That's basically what it was.
No, there was a lot of this that I had no context of. I'd never really looked into the history of the bicycle. Definitely not like kind of the cultural things that led to its invention, but even these different like specific early versions of it. Because I had obviously seen the one I feel like everybody sees when you're a kid is the one with the giant wheel, the giant
The
front
penny
wheel.
farthing. Penny
Yeah.
farther?
I
Yeah.
think penny farthing.
Or is that the act of riding that bike? I'm going to go penny farth.
I think that was the name. Oh, penny farth. It could be the act of it. That could be the verb.
I don't know.
There was a lot of very old timey stuff happening in here. And we haven't even gotten to the weird relationship to women with the bike. All of it
was
is
funny because I knew where it was going. I knew where it was because, okay. Well, I guess we'll get there in a second.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So they start out with early versions of the bicycle. And people are starting to like it. I mean, it would definitely be something. I'm trying to even imagine. The first time you get a bike, it feels great. When you're cut loose on your bicycle, people like it's a great moment. But they start out with these ones that are wildly unusable. Throughout the entire thing, there's this. There was multiple quotes in this, and everybody should definitely check the show out. Definitely, as I was listening to this show the first time, I was like, I could listen to a lot of these shows. Just because of like
I
how
think this is one of those shows that I am going to go back and just listen through. Just put it on my rotation because it's something we've talked about this many times where you're learning something, but it's fun, and you can also appreciate. It's like what I loved about lore, and I literally binged whole seasons of lore in a matter of like weeks, and I feel like this is that very similar show, just more on history, less spooky parts of history, more obscure parts of history.
But yeah, he starts talking about the bike, and throughout the beginning of this, their main concern is weird safety quotes, like because some of these quotes are seriously hilarious. It's paraphrased a little bit, but they multiple times compare the bike to a horse, and they're like, a horse would never do what these bikes do to people. They basically acted like a bike was some kind of a
deadly
evil
beast.
being that will attack you. And it said something like skin your nose, and like it's all very old timey and ridiculous. And so they keep trying to work on this bike so that they can maybe shake some of this bad public image that they have going of it being a devil machine that's going to rip your legs off.
And I will say this, okay, I've never been the anti news guy. Like I think that there's good to be taken out of the news. But when I see stories like this, where the news does this giant hype train of stupidity and make a big deal about something, I do a little introspection and be like, I wonder what is our current version of this ridiculous thing that they're saying.
Yes. And I definitely think that is a thing. I actually, when I was listening to all this and listening to people's safety reactions to the bike,
and especially editorial. I mean, you talk about editorial stuff. That's
that I'll give them a little bit of pass on editorials. It's designed to be an opinion piece. But I was just thinking about kind of a widespread fear of the machine itself. And it reminded me that I had read an article about how people were similarly suspicious and skeptical of seatbelts. So seatbelts were invented by Volvo and literally the patent released because they realized how many lives they could save. And to this day, most of the CDC and most of the people that are keeping these statistics think that seatbelts reduce serious crash related injuries and deaths by about half. So half is pretty serious. But when you look at when this was released, Wisconsin, like 55 years ago, was the first state to require seatbelts. So the first state to make it a legal thing. And essentially, it was met with widespread worry. Because, and some of this stuff is, you will see parallels throughout history of this reaction to this. And basically, there was scientific research done in the 40s and 50s that basically said this is helping save people's lives. But the main arguments against them were that they were causing internal injuries. They prevented easy escapes from cars submerged in water, and that they frequently failed. And it also got weirder outside of that too. Those are some of the fairly simple ones. And as I was reading this article,
it's a little bit more difficult to get out of the car if you have doors. Maybe just take the doors off.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. It's like if everything was a convertible, you just pop right out of there. But it's really funny because literally 4 years ago, this article was written. It's by Public Radio Wisconsin, and I believe all three of the people who actually commented on this agree with what the complaints were. So first one, freedom, getting smaller. I always buckle up on my motorcycle and wear my mandatory helmet. Keeps the insurance rates down. We need government to tell us what to do. We're just too stupid.
Wait, so this was then?
This was
now.
No, this is now. This was 4 years ago. This is the comments on this article.
So this is still people that are anti-seatbelt?
Yes. And literally the CDC says that the best way that they've gotten people to do this, to wear their seatbelts, is by making laws about it. So literally he's on it. He just thinks he's being sarcastic. They do need the government to tell them what to do because they are too stupid. Like literally there's a couple more in here that like essentially this should be voluntary. And it's like, when was the last time you heard of anyone getting a ticket for wearing a seatbelt or not wearing a seatbelt rather? So like, and it's just, I don't want to get too far off track.
It's usually something you get tacked on if you're already speeding and acting like an idiot.
Yeah.
You know?
I don't want to get off track here, but my main point, and it was confirmed by literally just the comments on Wisconsin's public radio article, literally still complaining about people's freedom to not wear a seatbelt.
Oh man.
Confirmed that even though we look back on this time of people freaking out about bicycle safety and saying that it's some kind of a devil device, we are really not that far advanced from there.
50-something years since the seatbelt.
We haven't made as much progress as we'd like to.
Somewhat mandatory, and still people are acting like it's an encroachment in freedom.
Yep.
Oh man.
So it's like,
wow.
I don't know. It made me feel better and worse about looking back in time and seeing like people reacting strongly and strangely to something that it doesn't seem like a hot take to say like, oh, here's a bike. Oh, that's clearly made by the devil to make you not go to church anymore.
Speaking of hot takes, which I think is hilarious, is one of the hot takes that, again, the news and editorial had, and apparently maybe a little bit of science at the time or pseudoscience. Now, this is in the 1800s, by the way. 1800s. Okay, I want to keep that in perspective. But was the idea that exercise might actually be bad for you and make you die earlier.
I do love this. There was so much of this, like, don't get me wrong, we've progressed some from the times that we're happening here, you know, because
we're not bloodletting anymore.
Yeah. No, there's definitely been some progress made.
But he said something in passing, and we're not going to get in the weeds about it, but it was funny to me, and I was like, he just mentioned it. Now I got to go look it up and see if it's true. He talked about a leader, a celebrity leader that still believes in the whole exercise is bad for you concept. And I have some quotes here from an article that was written on this man, a profile written about him. It says, after college, this person mostly gave up his personal athletic interest. He came to view time spent playing sports as time wasted. He believed the human body was like a battery with a finite amount of energy, which exercise only depleted. So he didn't work out. When he learned that someone that worked for him, one of his top casino executives, was training for an Ironman triathlon, he admonished him, "You're going to die young because of this." And then he just, there's so many quotes in here of this leader, and it's so funny because even today, just like we were talking about the seatbelt stuff, there are people that believe you've only got so much energy in your body, like a battery, and if you use it all, you're gonna die early.
It's a pretty special type of thought.
Oh man, I didn't know anybody thought that.
I didn't
know anybody thought that either. Ever. I definitely didn't know anybody thought that today.
It seems like
Apparently
one of those beliefs that's backed by laziness to me.
I mean, I can understand a small child getting that, understanding that because of based off their toys or something that, oh, the battery died in my toy and now whatever. But no.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree if batteries could eat, then like maybe I'd start to see the parallels here.
Oh man, I thought that was funny. He just kind of mentioned it in passing, and but that was
so it is
was comical to me.
It is that I mean, really, we've just kind of painted a bad picture about the progress we've made as a society. But in the end, we've made some progress. But some of these things,
though? It's just a new thing every time. That's the thing.
Yeah, no,
I don't know if science, yes, science, we've moved forward, obviously, but when it comes to cultural fads that come through and then they're demonized, or any type of government intervention, they might act like it's an encroachment in freedoms. It's I don't know. It's ridiculous, and especially when you bring religion in, and that's something that I saw coming a mile away.
Me too.
It's just man, as somebody that actually is a person that grew up with a faith and still kind of clings to the foundation of that faith, I knew it was coming, because when it comes to people exercising that faith, usually it is the stupidest possible ways you can possibly do it.
I'm like you, was waiting for the response from the church on the bicycle, with it being as big of a deal as it was. They had to have one, and it is a very, very stupid take, because essentially they came at it with like a multi-pronged approach.
Mm-hmm,
there was a lot of things they had wrong with bicycles. One, it made you not go to church, apparently.
You break the fourth commandment.
Yeah, you don't honor the Sabbath.
The Sabbath holy, and the Sabbath isn't on Sunday, but we made it Sunday, so we changed it.
Yeah. But now that we changed it, you're supposed to respect that and not ride your bike. So that was the first one. And then it also got you really see the signs of the times here when it starts to interact with women.
Oh, it got so weird.
It's terrible.
It's so
honestly,
backwards.
It's just terrible.
Like, the first take was like, women shouldn't be able to go anywhere alone. Like, bad. Yeah. Women alone, making decisions, going places. No.
Yeah,
that's
first
dangerous.
Step, autonomy of their person. Terrible. Bad idea.
So bad.
Bad idea. And so you immediately start with that, and you're like, okay, this is gonna get worse before it gets better. And it does. Because not only was there that, where you're allowing these women to go around and ride their bike by themselves, then they also said, trying to think how to say this nicely, based on where a bike seat is, there is a possibility
they sexualize the bicycle seat.
There is a possibility that women would be deriving pleasure from this.
Obviously, this was an issue that men had.
Yes.
I mean, this
is a rule made up by men. Like, has to be.
Oh man, it was so stupid.
Literally, they went as far as
it was like organizations making special bicycle seats.
Yeah, special bike seats that's hit your thighs instead of like underneath you, and like all weird, all terrible, like ridiculous. And
what about the medical condition of bicycle face?
That is maybe the one that I found the funniest, because it's just stupid. It's not as like hurtful as like misogynistic or anything like that. Too.
Mainly women, they said. Mainly
I do
women.
think it's
mainly happens to women.
It's more non-gendered than the other problems they had with the bike.
But I love how they still found a way to try to make it gendered. They're like, It mainly happens to women, but it could happen to men. But if it happens to a woman, then she's not pretty no more, and then she can't get married.
It's like, women can't let this happen to you. Kirk, would you like to describe to everybody what bicycle face is?
So bicycle face is you ride your bike and your face either gets flush because you're actually exercising, or it goes pale because you're actually exercising. And then your eyes get squinty, or they bulge. I like how the descriptions
it's
were
like a
exact
horoscope.
opposites.
Yeah, it's a horoscope. So literally, no matter what happens to your face, you're getting bicycle face. You know what
Basically,
I mean?
Whenever you exert yourself and you look like tired or do anything like that, those were the descriptions. It was like it was like when you tell your child, don't make that funny face because it might stick that way. that's what it sounded like.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, now you look all tired, but you might get bicycle face, and bicycle face means that tired face is not going to go away, and no one wants to marry that.
Yeah, I do feel like there was like a strong subtext of like, can't find husband if you have bicycle face.
It was so ridiculous.
On a more redemptive side, there is the fact that bicycles were also a huge part of the suffrage movement.
Mm-hmm.
And both being able to travel, and it like kind of became like almost like a symbol of the movement as well. So maybe they were right to be afraid, because that first kind of you put the crack in the dam essentially. And so yeah, they got some autonomy. They started seeing that they could travel somewhere by themselves, and then next thing you know, they want to vote, which is a great thing. So it did end up kind of changing, and now there's literally zero of this. I've never heard of one weird negative connotation for a bike now.
Yeah.
Like zero.
No.
It's just like, oh, that's a bike, which it took us a long time to get there, but we did it, everybody.
I bet you there's a church in backwoods like Kentucky or something that still thinks bicycles are bad.
Yeah. And I mean, there's also churches who've gone the complete opposite direction, like the Mormon church, or is it the Jehovah's Witness that loves bikes? Like everybody has a bike.
I think it's Jehovah's Witnesses.
And they ride around on their bikes all the time.
Yeah. But I thought it was hilarious. And the way that he ended it called back to the beginning of the episode when he was talking about Mary Shelley and Frankenstein, because she was one of the first female authors that was actually taken seriously. And she literally created a genre, and how much of an influence she had on the literary world. And it kind of it was a callback to, I don't know, he just did such an amazing job of tying everything together into a nice, cohesive story.
It really is worth checking out this show. It was one of those ones, I think that I found this just through, every once in a while, the podcast subreddit will have a thread like, what's a great show to binge that isn't like on everybody's radar? And I saw this one and I read the description of it and I was like, that seems right up our alley. Like that seems exactly like the type of shows we love to listen to. And I listened to the first one and it's just so good. So this is definitely one that I like highly recommend people go find one that looks interesting. Pick any one. It's probably all really good, and check it out. It's a really fun time. You'll learn a bunch of stuff. Some of it's terrible. You know, we learned some terrible things this episode, but we have overcome. The bicycle is now none of these things.
Yeah. So that was The Constant. Thank you guys for checking that show out. Mark, I want to be your friend. Let's be podcast friends.
Yeah, 100%.
Let's do something together.
Love the show.
So I've got a recommendation this week that I found, and I was looking for something more on the sciencey end, something more on like the environment end, because I try to help us break it up a little bit. We already did our fiction one last week. We're doing one based off history this week, so I try to break it up, and I found a great show about science stuff. It's called Dope Labs, and it's hosted by two amazing hosts. And I want to talk about Dope Labs, lab number 28. There's something in the water, and it specifically talks about like global warming in context of the ocean. And it's fascinating. I actually learned a lot about the ocean, like a lot, like things I didn't know about at all. But also, about how we can do better. And that's something that I like. The through line about the episode was kind of what we've always said. It's not a matter of, we're destroying everything. Like just seeing that I don't, it doesn't feel good when you come at it from that angle. But if you can come at anything like this, like with, the ecosystem and how we're affecting it, coming at it with the concept of how can we do better, I feel like is always more redemptive,
Yeah, totally.
And so that's kind of where they come from. And I really like that. But yeah, so that's Dope Labs number 28. There's something in the water. And remember,
there's always more to discover.
This was a podcast from the Podfix Network. Check out more shows like it at oddfixnetwork.com.